As you know, on Sunday night or Monday morning of every week, we post a new expository semiotics explaining why we would choose which lectionary readings. But in these readings, our dream is, and our desire is, to help you read the signs and fondle the details and spot the seminal metaphors, the condensed signs and the stories that are key for preaching to a digital culture. So strap on your seatbelt and join us as we prospect our passages for today. LenTalk Sweet here, really glad to be with you for the 29th vlog, lectionary vlog, 4th of October, the 18th Sunday after Pentecost. The passages for today, Exodus 20, 1-4, 7-9, 12-20, which is, guess what? The 10 Commandments. Yeah, the biggie. Not the 10 suggestions, the 10 Commandments. Psalm 19, 1-14. This is the source, this psalm here. The decrees of the Lord are more precious than gold. They are sweeter than honey from the honeycombs. This is where you also get some of these passages that we know by heart. The heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So these great passages, all from this one psalm. But this psalm is also, now, I found no evidence that this custom goes back any more than a couple hundred years. So you'll often see hear it referred to as a very ancient custom of the Jews to put a little honey on a page. So the first time a child opened up the Torah, that they would lick the honey so that they would have the experience of tasting the decrees of the Lord are sweet as honey. I have not found any evidence of it I found evidence for it like 200-300 years ago, but not beyond that. But it's still a wonderful custom. It's a wonderful metaphor. So be careful when you reference it. So, well, the ancient Hebrews did this. No, I can't find it. Maybe you can find that they did, but I can't find any evidence that they did. But it's such a beautiful metaphor. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Not intellectually comprehend and understand that the Lord is good, or figure out in your rational capacities about the goodness of God, or critique the goodness. No, taste and see, experience. I call taste and see the Lord is good. The verse, THE, the holy experience. THE. It is the holy experience of the Scripture. Taste and see that the Lord is good. God wants us to experience God's goodness with all of our senses. Taste, see, hear, touch the goodness of God. The verse, the holy experience verse. Philippians 3, 4b-14, the surpassing worth of knowing Christ. What a great passage. For whose sake I've lost all things, I consider them garbage. I may find Christ and be found of him. I want to know Christ, to know the power of his resurrection, the participation in his sufferings. That is above all, to know Christ, to press to take hold of that to which Christ Jesus has taken hold of me. All right, we're first caught by Christ and captured by his love and mercy. And as he's taken hold of us, then we love because Christ first loved us. It's going to be important for the Matthew text that we're going to come up on in just a minute. So, forgetting what is behind, I press on to the goal to win the prize of Jesus Christ. It doesn't mean you totally forget the past, but you press on. You don't live life looking in a rearview mirror. We got some people that are just looking in a rearview. Then we got people who've taken out the rearview mirror, and they don't even know there's a rearview mirror. So the polarized world in which we live, but you can't drive forward without a rearview mirror. We need both. So we come now to the text for today. This is Matthew 21. We were in it last week. It is one of the most violent stories Jesus tells. And when you read it, it's almost hard to hear the parable of the wretched tenants. And so I'm gonna read it, but it's not gonna be fun reading it. But we need to hear it, because this is the one we're gonna park on for a bit and spend a little time on. So here we go. Matthew 21, verses 33 to 46. This is what happens when you get onion skin. There we go. Onion skin pages. They refuse to turn. Listen to another parable. There was a certain landowner who planted a vineyard and built a wall around it. He dug a winepress in it and built a tower, and then he rented it to vine dressers and went into a distant country. Now, notice what happens here. You got a landowner, and he sets up the vine dressers in paradise. I mean, literally, what does he do? He's got a wall around it so all the vines don't get eaten by all the animals. Like, we need a wall around here to keep the deer out. I mean, that's a whole other story. The deer are a rodent species. Just let me stop there. But so he's got a wall around it. He puts a wine press in it. He builds a tower so that they can make sure that everybody's going to be safe who lives in there. So he's setting them up as great as anybody could be set up to do the job of being vine dressers. When the season of the fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the vine dressers to receive his fruit. And the vine dressers took his servants and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Again, he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did likewise to them. Last of all, he sent his son to them, saying, "They will respect my son." But when the vine dressers saw the son, they said to themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and seize his inheritance." So they caught him, threw him out of the vineyard, and killed him. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those vine dressers? And that's the story. So who are the vine dressers? And who's the owner of the land? Who's the owner of the vineyard? Sisters and brothers, this is a challenge for you to call your people to recognize that we are the vine dressers, that God has set us up in paradise. God has put us on this garden planet, in this garden galaxy, in this garden universe, and put us in a garden. And given us a challenge. Given us what the second Star Trek series called the Prime Directive. In the first series, it was called the Original Command, or Command Number 1. But if we don't get the Prime Directive right, we don't get anything right. Now, you have first commandments and last commandments. And in the story, right here, the first commandment of the Bible is eat freely. That's Genesis 2, but that's the first time God speaks, and God says, eat freely. Okay. Doesn't say don't eat that tree. Eat freely. You know what the last command is? Look at Revelation. The last chapter of Revelation, work your way. The last command where God speaks, drink freely. Do you know that the Bible has bookends? Eat freely, drink freely. And all the rest is a table. This is not a tablet of ink. This is a table of food. This is a messianic banquet on which we receive the gifts of God for the people of God. And we feast on him in our hearts daily, gladly. But the prime directive, it's not God speaking here, but it's a directive that God announces to Adam and Eve. And that is, tend and till the garden. Now let's be clear. Tend means care for. It means conserve. This is my creativity. This is my creation. It's mine. But I'm putting you in charge of it for a little while. So I'm asking you to take care of it, to conserve it. Now, the second one is to till it. In other words, keep my creativity going. Continue my creativity. I want you to help me. I created you in my image, so I'm the creator, and I want you to be creative too. So keep my creativity going. So continue my creativity. So we have this, first of all, God's a conservative, and then God's a liberal. Conserve what I've started, but have fun. Okay, just continue my creativity. Cultivate. Be creative. But it's God's estate. All right, so we have these two prime directives that we are enjoined to keep. And how have we fulfilled these prime directives? It has been a disaster. I mean, look at how we have we conserved what God has entrusted us with? I mean, my grandfather was a sawyer, West Virginia mountains, and he and his three brothers had competing sawyer firms, and they would go out with the loggers. In fact, in one of our cottages where people stay for advances, we have a logging pan, wrought iron pan that made pancakes, and it is about this big. Okay, so they had the best pancakes. My grandfather said always was made with bear grease. Bear grease made the best pancakes. So, but he had a picture of one of these trees they cut down, where 24 loggers and sawyers stood on the trunk. 24. We will never see trees like that again. Do you know why? And this is, the Native Americans, they cut down trees too. They cut down as many trees as the Europeans did. I mean, they were ruthless in cutting down. But here's the difference. When they went in to clear a field for planting, they would always cut down first the weaker, smaller trees, because they wanted to honor the strongest of the trees, and they wouldn't mess with the strongest of the trees because they sensed, they didn't have a biology for this, but they sensed that the future depended on that field being seeded by the strong ones, not the weak ones. And so they would leave and honor the greatest trees. When the Europeans came in, they said, we're the biggest trees. We're going to cut those down first. And so what we left were the weak little trees. And so we will never see the magnificent. Conserve what I've created. Even make it better. Greater things will you do, Jesus. Even make it better. But it all based on conserve. Now, when we talk about, I say conserve and conceive. Continue my creativity. I do not like the language, frankly, and I still know some of you are using it, of co-creator. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. When I put myself up and puff myself up as I'm with God, I just get really nervous. There's an old bumper sticker of God is your co-pilot. Somebody's in the wrong seat. No, God is God. I'm not. So I'm to continue God's creativity, which means I'm not a co-creator. I'm a sub-creator. I'm continuing God. Hitler was one of the most creative people who ever lived. He just went off on his own creativity. He was a co-creator. No, we are to continue God's creativity, but do it as God has showed us how to do it, and in keeping with the story. Stay within the story. So let's get the prime directive right. And this is a time when you're going to be asking for money from your people. It's called stewardship. Really? How long have we been talking about stewardship and how many sermons? I even tried one early in my ministry. A steward is a keeper of a pigsty. This is a great way to raise money from your people, is to talk to them about being the keeper of a pigsty. No. Hey, stewardship is based on a theology of giving. I give to God of what is mine. But that's not the story. The story is not, I give to God of what's mine. The story is, how much do I receive for myself of what is God's? That's trusteeship, because the prime directive is, this is mine. I'm entrusting you, like any of you been trustees of an estate? To administer that estate, you get to keep a certain percentage of that estate, but you've got to be carefully accounting for it, and it can't be that much. And you can go to jail if you fail your job as a trustee of that estate. And sisters and brothers, we're going to jail today. Metaphorically, climactically, culturally, socially, because we have failed to honor this prime directive. This is an estate, a trust from God. It is not mine. And you prove it when you die. You take nothing with you. What Jesus said to the rich young ruler, he says to everybody, you got to give it all away. Nobody gets out of life without giving it all away. The only question is, who's going to get it? We all give it all away. So it's not really ours to be. So the question is not, we need a theology of receiving before a theology of giving. And this is a confessional moment here. I have one of the worst spiritual problems anybody can have. And I probably shouldn't tell you all this, but I started it, so I got to go through with it. And my soul is in jeopardy every day because I have this problem. And my problem is a fatal threat to my spirit, is that I'm a better giver than a receiver. I love to give. I don't know how to receive. I don't like to receive. I give parties. I don't go to parties. I give parties. I love to be the host. At Christmas time, I love to give presents, but when it comes time for me to open my presents, I do it kind of by the side so nobody can see me, because I'm embarrassed. I don't know how to receive, but I love to give. See, now, this is as bad a problem as you can have, because the worst problem you can have is a category mistake. And God's category is giver. My category is receiver. And the fact that I'm a better giver than a receiver, I don't like to give. I don't like to receive, I like to give, means I don't like my category. I really like God's category, which means I got a God complex, which means my soul is in mortal peril every day. So we've got to switch here from this, we got to be better givers. No. You don't give to God of what's yours. How much are you going to receive from God to do the mission that God has given you and to honor his estate, to conserve and to conceive, to continue God's creativity, to take that vineyard and make it beautiful and full of fruit, so when it's harvest time and the owner comes and says, where's my fruit? We're not given what's ours. We're receiving for our own usefulness what is God's. And so we need not a theology of stewardship, but a theology of trusteeship. We need not a theology of giving, better theology of giving. We need a theology of receiving. And this theology of receiving applies not just to material things. If we're a trustee, we're not just a trustee of an estate, a material estate, or any kind of other estate, but we're also trustees of our story. I mean, this is one of the most precious gifts that God has given you, is your story? And are you a good trustee of your story? And the story of what brought you to this place and how you got here and the story of our ancestors. I think digital culture is loosening the cord, and it's corroding the connections that link us to our past and to our connections. And I'm very, very concerned that we are losing this sense of being good trustees. We're not being good. We're not following the prime directive of the story of who we are as a people, as a church, or how about this one? This is, right now, we are in October 4th. September 6th in 1620, 400 years ago, last month, a group of a little over 100 people left England and arrived at Cape Cod on November 11th. No, they actually left in July, but they went with another boat called the Speedwell. And the Speedwell was a leaky boat. And so they went a little bit and then it leaked, so they went back and they tried to fix it again. They went, it leaked again. So they went back. Finally, they just gave up the Speedwell. And the Mayflower came by itself, leaving September 6th, arriving all through September, October, and arriving at the outer banks of the Cape on November 11th. These pilgrims were the first people in history to really, now you can find this earlier. I mean, this thing called religious freedom. But they came over here. The Jamestown settlement is a whole different story because they came over for gold and glory, and the first thing they did was start digging up, see if they could find gold in the streets. So that's a whole different story. But the Pilgrims came over to be able to worship as they felt that they should be able to worship. And so it was the ideal of religious freedom. This is a unique concept in history. Now, you have it a few other places, like Genghis Khan. Can you believe it? Genghis Khan actually was, I mean, he was kind of schizophrenic. He tried to conquer the world. He wanted to conquer everybody. And so he would go to a country or a village, or he'd say, submit or die. If you submitted, he would treat you well. And you got, he supported Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, everybody. Everybody got to worship as they wanted. But if you resisted, you got murdered and raped. I mean, it was just, that's Genghis Khan. So it was all or nothing. So you do have a little concept of religious freedom in Genghis Khan, but you get a lot of other things that weren't so pleasant. And I really think, in some ways, the real one to talk about is the pagan Persian king Cyrus. Cyrus the Great. I'm going to say something about that in a minute. But you see, these pilgrims come over, and they come here for religious freedom, but there's somebody in their midst that says, you're not taking it far enough. His name is Roger Williams, a Baptist. He goes, you're not taking it far enough, because I want to worship as I please, and you're still confining me to worship as you please. So he goes and founds a whole new place called Rhode Island. And then there was another guy called Lord Baltimore who says, no, but we ought to extend that religious freedom further to Catholics. And so he goes and founds Baltimore, Maryland. And he extends it. And also you got William Penn who extends it to the Quakers. So you got to go into the Quakers, you got to go into the Catholics. And actually, in 1639, you had the first written guarantee of religious freedom as part of the Maryland Statute. And then, you know, it goes all the way to finally it gets enshrined in an amendment. It was penned by Thomas Jefferson, who, as he's learning from the Pilgrims and Roger Williams and Lord Baltimore and William Penn, he goes back and studies this pagan Persian king, Cyrus. Cyrus the Great, who I think, by the way, was the greatest leader in all of human history. Persia, now Iran. What a heritage. What a story Iran has, the real story of Iran. And so he reads this Persian writings and the cylinder that was put out. And from that, we have the first time in history, in any constitution, we have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. All started by this group. I've had many advances here, and nobody has ever noticed the two books that I keep on the back of this pulpit that I made into a bookshelf. One is a book that I love to read, but it's called Mayflower, Nathaniel Philbrick. I think it's the best study of the Mayflower. But this one is my pride and joy. This is the Mayflower Log. It's a facsimile edition of the Mayflower Log. And this is where it all starts, right here. By the way, this is the 400th anniversary, these 2 months. Have you heard anybody celebrate? Wait, this is 400 years. What a big deal. Let's celebrate the 400th anniversary of their arrival at the Pilgrims on Plymouth Rock. And what a big deal. This is when religious liberty starts. Isn't this a great thing? Let's celebrate it. Why can we not celebrate our own story? Is it historical amnesia? Is it cancel culture that cancels out anything that might have anything controversial in it because they didn't get it all right, as if we were all going to get it all right? No, they didn't get it all right, but what is it that is preventing us from living out the prime directive? Maybe we can't focus on more than one social issue at a time and so just one thing. No. We are called to be trustees of this planet. We're called to be trustees of the body of Christ. We're called to be trustees of the life story that God gives us. We're called to be trustees of the tribal story to which we were born. And it all begins with a theology of receiving. What do I receive for myself of what is not mine, but what is God's? Because everything has come from God. All that I am has come from God. I can only love because Christ first loved me. Freely you have received. Now freely give. We don't get the receiving right, we're never going to get the giving right. This planet, prime directive, is a gift from God for us to conserve and cultivate. Freely you have received, I'll freely give back. Semiotics is the art of angling, of turning things askew, upside down, inside out, cattywampus, sunny side up, over easy, scrambled, hard-boiled. We hope you enjoyed today's journey, but always remember, it's more important you prepare the preacher than you prepare the sermon.